The day you launch your website is actually the first day of your project.
This is Velocitize Talks. I'm Eric Jones. I'm here with Anne Stefanik, who's the founder and CEO of Kanopi. Anne, it's good to have you.
Thanks, Eric. It's great to be here.
And tell us a little bit about Kanopi, the origin of the agency, and your vision for the agency.
For sure. Well, at Kanopi, we design, build, and support websites for clients who want to make a positive impact, which means we mostly work in the mission-driven space, but also with corporate do-gooders. And our real mission is to make an impact. And that includes taking care of our employees, our clients, and then ultimately making the world a better place. And our origins really came from, we actually started the agency out of necessity. I was living in San Francisco. I didn't quite realize the cost of living there. And I started hustling side projects off the side of my desk. Soon, in about 2013, I realized there was an actual demand for web services. And we spun up at the time what was a Drupal only agency. And our very first inquiry was, hey, do you folks do WordPress? So I turned to our team and said, hey, do you folks do WordPress? And Shane, who's still one of our employees today, said, we do. And thankfully, we are about 50-50 in Drupal or WordPress today.
So WordPress is, historically, just a very, very flexible platform. Have you seen a big progression in terms of, marketers being more of the decision makers around, website builds? Or does that still reside largely with the IT folks?
We definitely have seen a shift. And it's probably been over the last 6 years or so where the decision really lays in the hands of the marketer. And they're evaluating different things. They're making sure that the site is really easy to use, that they can quickly spin up pages on their own. And they also are able to really clearly communicate their brand message. Now, IT usually still has a stake in the decision, but they're much more of a consulted partner than the actual core decision maker.
WordPress had its origins as, a great tool for bloggers. And, that was many years ago. Now it's moved into the enterprise. Why do you think that is? Why has WordPress gained, more than a foothold in the enterprise? And why should more enterprises be thinking about WordPress as their digital front door?
Yeah, I love that question because WordPress is not just a blogging engine and it can do so much from localization, personalization. You can spin up microsites very quickly. I think the biggest strength that WordPress has over proprietary, because a lot of those things are very equal against platforms, but is the agility that with WordPress, you can quickly and easily spin up sites. You can quickly and easily change content. You can change the look and feel without a lot of cumbersome overhead. We're also seeing the enterprise market be a lot more trusting of open source. Like the security question is kind of off the table. There's a great article that you can link to that the Department of Defense has this FAQ as to why the Department of Defense encourages the use of open source. So I think with some of those footholds you're seeing more enterprises saying, oh, yeah, Department of Defense uses open source. We can use WordPress. And then the marketer gets kind of that power to have that agility and that nimble with their nimble site.
You have a great philosophy around continual improvement around websites. How does that philosophy, lead to ultimately much better TCO rather than a one and done, set it and forget it type approach?
That's a great question. I think a lot of marketers had this idea that if you build a website, then in 2 or 3 years, you should just rebuild it. But that's a lost opportunity. First, a website is kind of a growing, evolving piece of technology. And we believe at Kanopi that the day you launch your website is actually the first day of your project. Everything before that is kind of a very expensive, fancy plan, but rubber hits the road when you go live. So the idea of just setting it and forgetting it is just a waste opportunity. Instead, we like to take this idea of constantly working on the website and solving one problem at a time. So the first one is get launched and live, and the next one is probably doing a bit of analysis to figure out what's working and what's not and refining it so you can have a better conversion rates or you can have a deeper penetration from an SEO standpoint and get on those getting ranked for the key terms you're looking for.
What's one of the most common causes that you see for sort of failed growth through a website, and how should companies be thinking about avoiding that, or how can they fix it once it's in place?
A lot of it is people think they can set it and forget it, or they try to solve too many problems at a time. Most marketers have some type of North Star. So I find as an agency, the first goal we have is to define what their idea of success is, and then break that down into either quarterly, monthly, or weekly goals that we can achieve. So sometimes the first goal is to get more leads. Then once we get more leads, it's to help qualify the leads better so the sales team has a better set of leads to work from. So when we're talking to marketers, the biggest thing that they do is they either try to solve too many problems at once, or they don't do anything at all and the site becomes quite stale quite quickly.
You mentioned personalization earlier. Where are we in sort of the hype cycle, if you will, of personalization, and how should potential clients or clients be thinking about personalization these days?
Personalization is a bit of a buzzword in a lot of ways because it can mean so many things. We always encourage our clients to take a crawl, walk, run approach. That we don't want you to go and invest in some fancy personalization software if your forms aren't converting very well, or if you don't even have the right web traffic. So the first thing we'd like to do is take a look at, is your site actually working for the audiences that it's supposed to serve? Check, yes, it is. Okay, what is the next level? How can we create a more personalized experience, even by doing specialized email campaign work? So if people are coming to your website and they can self-select getting onto a certain list, then you can send more personalized content. All of that is fairly low lift. So before you go and invest in like a very fancy, expensive personalization platform, is to make sure you have some of those fundamentals in place. Also, with big data, it could be your friend or it can be your foe. We've all heard kind of those horror stories about, big data getting out and recommending things that are kind of not appropriate. So you really want to make sure that when you do set this up for success, that you're looking at your data sources and how that you can consume that in a way that makes the most sense for your users. A lot of the time, personalization can be as easy as helping people just self-navigate to the correct part of the site. And that right there is a huge win because then you can create targeted content that really funnels them in the right direction.
The pandemic has been tough on nonprofits. What lessons have you gleaned from the pandemic and digital experiences for nonprofits? And what advice would you have for them in terms of how they set up their digital experiences or with their marketing campaigns?
I think the big word from 2020 forward has been pivot, and it has been this constant sense of adjustment and adjust and adjust. So being really comfortable with being nimble and adapting to change, because all of a sudden everybody was forced to be at home and digital became the true tip of the spear. And while people thought, oh yeah, people go to my website, now everybody's looking at the website. And so even as we start to open into hybrid events or we start to get back to this new normal, we got to think about that digital first experience isn't going anywhere. So it's starting to think, even if you are going to have an event, they're going to need to go through the web experience to register, or you want to encourage additional connections after the event, you're going to send them back to the website. So it is really thinking that as part of any digital experience, the website is part of a central piece of tooling, and that you want to keep that tool sharp in your shed so that if you do need to all of a sudden move in a certain direction, you have the agility and you can be nimble to make those changes.
Page speed has always been important for websites, and now even more so with Core Web Vitals. What should companies be doing to ensure that they pass the assessment and, probably more importantly, that they rank highly in search results?
Yeah, sometimes in WordPress, there's these kind of fast, easy, cheap site building type tools and these custom themes. But sometimes those custom themes come with a lot of extra overhead and weight. So if you are starting a site from the ground up, I'd recommend leaning on kind of the Genesis framework, using StudioPress to get you something that's out of the box and it's a little bit more lightweight. If you're in an older system that has like an Elementor or a Beaver builder in it, they may be causing some performance issues, which it could be something it's just replacing the theme. So it's kind of looking at some of those technical underpinnings, but you can also look at things of like image sizes. A lot of times that marketers will take a beautiful picture, they'll get something from stock and they'll upload the full size. So that will hit performance. So there is some content marketing tips and tricks that you can go ahead and help with your performance. Another one is complex animations, all of that like fanciness, it looks really cool, but is it going to weigh down on your performance? So you want to look at ways that you can do smart interactions or, animations, but that don't actually hit your performance.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Macromedia back in the day, right? How it was beautiful, but it led to a very slow loading experience.
Yeah. And PS, you want to be on a good hosting platform. You want to make sure you have a really good hosting platform, because we do find some of the performance tools that are out of the box with a wonderful partner like WP Engine helps really maximize the performance. Even if you have some legacy code that might be more challenging just to fix, sometimes just upgrading your hosting environment can make a huge difference on performance.
What's the best piece of professional advice that you've ever been given?
Whatever you put in your petri dish will grow. So if you are a smaller agency or a newer agency, it might be scary to say no to certain things, but ultimately it'll serve you better. Because if we had started off and just got a whole bunch of oil and gas clients, that's probably where our focus would be today, versus we really focused on how do we create impact in the mission-driven space and higher ed and nonprofit. And that's really our core specialty today.
One of the questions we love asking our guests is a book or podcast that you'd like to recommend to our viewers.
So I actually brought it with me because it's so important to me that every business owner reads Profit First. Mike Michalowicz, he's a great author. He's hilarious, but it was totally freaky to run an agency and not be making as much profit as I could or should, because I was just in the day-to-day business. So it very much has that Oprah Winfrey's philosophy of pay yourself first. In the business, it means take your profit first and then figure everything out. It's a lot more complex, but actually pretty simple. So I'd highly recommend that book. As for a podcast, I'm an agency owner, and I really enjoy the Build a Better Agency by the Agency Management Institute. They put out great content, and it's very focused on the agency experience, both as a business owner and how do I make my business better.
And that was wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely. Thank you.
That was Ann Stefanik, the founder and CEO of Kanopi.